October 12, 2019, Vienna, Austria. 5 in the morning. A long straight avenue cuts through a city park. The road is perfectly smooth. Workers have spent days removing every fallen leaf, every stone, anything that could cost a man a fraction of a second. 41 of the fastest runners on the planet stand ready, arranged like fighter jets in a formation. And at the center of that formation, one man, 34 years old, a Kenyan farmer's son, the greatest marathon runner who has ever lived. Eliud Kipchoge is about to attempt something that scientists spent decades insisting the human body simply cannot do. Run 42 kilometers in under 2 hours. He is going to cross that line in 1 hour, 59 minutes, and 40 seconds, and it will never officially count. Stay with me, because this story is not just about running. It is about what happens when science, corporate money, and the raw limits of the human body collide. And about what one barefoot kid from the Ugandan mountains might be about to do to rewrite everything we thought we knew. Let me take you back, way back, to the year 490 BC, when a Greek soldier named Phidippides supposedly ran from the battlefield of Marathon all the way to Athens, around 40 kilometers, burst into the assembly hall, screamed "We have won," and dropped dead. Here is what they never tell you. That story is almost certainly a legend invented centuries after the fact. The historian Herodotus, the man who was actually there to document it, never wrote it. What he did write was that Phidippides ran approximately 240 kilometers, from Athens to Sparta and back, to ask for military backup before the battle. That is closer to a week-long ultramarathon than a city sprint. And the distance we now call sacred, 42.195 kilometers, was not standardized until the 1908 London Olympics, when organizers adjusted the course so the race would start at Windsor Castle and finish directly in front of the Royal Viewing Box. 26 miles and 385 yards. An entirely arbitrary number, chosen so the king had a comfortable sightline. The distance that the world treats as the ultimate human test exists because someone wanted a good seat. Now, before we get to Nike, to Vienna, and to the man who is going to change everything, we need to talk about where this sport actually came from. Because the history of marathon running is also a history of humans trying to cheat the limit. Sometimes with cars, sometimes with rat poison, sometimes with both at once. August 14, 1904. St. Louis, Missouri. The Olympic Marathon. The race organizers decided, in what can only be described as an act of spectacular scientific cruelty, to run an experiment on dehydration. They placed exactly 2 official water stations across the entire 40-kilometer course because they wanted to study how the human body degrades without fluid. In August heat, on dusty dirt roads where cars and horses kicked up clouds of choking grime. The first runner to cross the finish line was an American named Fred Lors. 20,000 spectators erupted. He accepted congratulations from Alice Roosevelt, the president's daughter. And then officials discovered he had spent approximately 11 miles of the race riding in a car. He claimed it was a prank. He was briefly banned from the sport. He later won the 1905 Boston Marathon legitimately, and history has mostly moved on. The official winner, Thomas Hicks, looked like a man who had survived a war, because physiologically he had. With 10 kilometers remaining, his handlers refused him water and instead administered raw egg white mixed with strychnine sulfate. That is rat poison. Then brandy. Then a second dose of strychnine. He was partially supported across the finish line in 3 hours, 28 minutes, and 53 seconds, the slowest Olympic winning time in history by a wide margin. He reportedly said the race had nearly killed him, and he retired from marathons immediately. And then there was Felix Carvajal, a Cuban postal worker who arrived at the start in street clothes, borrowed scissors to cut his trousers into shorts, chatted with spectators mid-race, stopped to eat apples from an orchard alongside the route, and still finished fourth. The 1904 Olympic marathon was not a race. It was a warning, a preview of what the human body will endure and improvise and survive in the pursuit of going faster than it should. Fast forward to 1991. A physiologist at the Mayo Clinic named Michael Joyner sits down with a pen and the best human performance data available and builds a mathematical model of the ideal marathon runner. Not a real person. A theoretical one, assembled from the highest values ever measured in elite distance runners. And when he runs the numbers, the model spits out a time of 1 hour, 57 minutes, and 58 seconds. The marathon world record at the time was over 2 hours and 9 minutes. His colleagues thought he had lost his mind. Reviewers of his paper called the prediction nuts. He published it anyway. Joyner was not crazy. He was simply seeing the future. And he would spend the next 3 decades watching the world catch up to a number he had written down before most of today's record holders were born. December 2016. Nike makes an announcement. They are going to break the 2-hour marathon barrier. They assemble a team of 20 scientists, biomechanists, shoe designers, aerodynamicists, and performance coaches. They work in secret for over 2 years. They select 3 athletes: reigning Olympic marathon champion Eliud Kipchoge of Kenya, multiple Boston champion Lalisa Desisa of Ethiopia, and then half-marathon world record holder Zersine Tadese of Eritrea. The location they choose is the Autodromo Nazionale Monza, a Formula One racing circuit in northern Italy. Flat, smooth, tree-lined, minimal wind. They select it after screening locations worldwide and analyzing 6 years of weather data. They design a rotating formation of 30 pacemakers, including Olympic champions, arranged in a flying wedge based on computational fluid dynamics, essentially an aerodynamic shield built from human bodies. They put a Tesla in front projecting a laser pace line onto the asphalt, ticking off the exact speed required at every second. Gel delivery is choreographed so Kipchoge never breaks stride. And then there is the shoe. The prototype ancestor of every carbon plate racing shoe you see on a start line today. An independent peer-reviewed study found it reduced the energetic cost of running by an average of 4% compared to leading racing flats. 4% sounds modest. In a 2-hour marathon at world record pace, 4% is between 1 and 4 minutes. It is the difference between history and second place. On May 6, 2017, Kipchoge passes the halfway point in 59 minutes and 57 seconds, right on sub-2 pace. Around the 35th kilometer, his split slows by a few seconds. The clock, which had been his ally, turns against him. He finishes in 2 hours, 0 minutes, and 25 seconds. 25 seconds. 150 meters. The width of a soccer penalty area standing between Kipchoge and the greatest single athletic achievement in human history. World Athletics refuses to ratify even the performance. The rotating pacers, the laser car, the closed circuit, all violations of competition rules. But something has shifted. Scientists stop asking if a sub-2 marathon is possible. They start asking when. Here is what is actually happening inside the body of a man running at 2 minutes and 50 seconds per kilometer, and why it is so brutally hard to sustain. Think of it this way. Every human body is an engine. The first thing that matters is the size of that engine, the ceiling of how much oxygen your heart, lungs, and muscles can process per minute. A sedentary adult sits around 40 units. Elite endurance athletes reach 70 to 85. The highest ever officially measured was 97.5 in an 18-year-old Norwegian cyclist. Big engine. But here is the twist. The greatest marathoners alive do not have the biggest engines. They have good engines. What makes them untouchable is how long they can run that engine near its absolute limit without it overheating. That is the second variable. and it is the one that actually wins marathons. In untrained people, the engine starts to overheat at around 60% of its maximum. In elite marathoners, that threshold sits at 80 to 85%. They cruise near the red line for 2 straight hours without the system breaking down. And the third variable is fuel efficiency. Imagine 2 cars with identical engines. One is a Formula One car, engineered so that every drop of fuel translates directly into forward motion. The other is a heavy truck, burning the same fuel but losing energy to weight, friction, and drag at every turn. East African runners, Kenyans, Ethiopians, and now Ugandans are built like the Formula One car. Long, compliant tendons that store and return energy with each stride, slender lower legs that cost almost nothing to swing, and bodies shaped by years of running at altitude from childhood. Same fuel, far less waste. 2 years after Monza, Ineos steps in as sponsor, and the operation is even bigger. 41 elite pacemakers rotating in shifts on a 9.6-kilometer loop through Vienna's Prater Park. Workers cleared the road of every fallen leaf and conker in the days before. A wind tunnel study published years later estimated that Kipchoge's pacemaker formation cut his aerodynamic drag roughly in half, the equivalent of removing a constant headwind from every single kilometer of the race. On October 12, 2019, Kipchoge runs every kilometer between 2 minutes and 48 and 2 minutes and 52 seconds. 42 consecutive kilometers. He crosses the line in 1 hour, 59 minutes, and 40 seconds. He pumps his fist. He smiles. He cries. Thousands of people around him scream. 2 weeks later, World Athletics confirms what everyone already knew. Rotating pacemakers, a laser pace car, a made-for-one event. Violations of competition rules. 1:59:40 will never appear in the official record books. Kipchoge says, no human is limited. World Athletics says, this one is, by our rulebook. After Vienna, the man who seemed most likely to achieve sub-2 in a legal race was not Kipchoge. It was a 24-year-old Kenyan named Kelvin Kiptum. In October 2023, at the Chicago Marathon, he ran 2 hours and 35 seconds. The first man to officially break 2 hours and 1 minute. He ran the second half of the race faster than the first, at a pace that had never been seen under legal competition conditions. World Athletics ratified it in early 2024. The sub-2 barrier suddenly felt like it was one training cycle away from falling officially. 4 months after ratification, Kelvin Kiptum died in a car crash near Eldoret, Kenya. He was 24 years old. The man who was going to break 2 hours is gone. His record stands as the unfinished sentence of a life cut short. But records do not mourn. They wait. And the torch does not go out. It passes. It passed to a kid born November 14, 2000, in Queen District, eastern Uganda. He grew up in a poor farming family, left school after 5th grade because his parents could not afford the fees, and ran 5 kilometers each way to school in the mountains every single day. At altitude, in the rain, as a child. Jacob Kiplimo won the World Under-20 Cross-Country Championship at 17, on home soil in Kampala. World Half Marathon Champion at 20. 3-time Senior World Cross Country Champion by 25. Every year since 2016, he has stood on a global podium. And then, in early 2025, at the Barcelona Half Marathon, something happened that should not have been physically possible. Kiplimo ran 21 kilometers in 56 minutes and 42 seconds. 2 minutes and 41 seconds per kilometer. The first human being ever under 57 minutes. 48 seconds inside the world record. World Athletics refused to ratify it. A lead vehicle had been running too close, creating an aerodynamic slipstream. A jaw-dropping run, erased not by doping, not by cheating, but by a car that drove 30 meters too close to a man running faster than any human in history. Sound familiar? On March 8, 2026, he returned to Lisbon, the course that already holds his official world record from 2021, and ran 57 minutes and 20 seconds. Official, ratified. He is 23 years old. Michael Joyner's 1991 model put the theoretical marathon minimum at 1 hour, 57 minutes, and 58 seconds. An economist named Simon Angus, in a completely separate 2018 statistical analysis of world record progressions, independently arrived at 1 hour, 58 minutes, and 5 seconds. Two different methodologies. Nearly the same answer. The official world record right now is 2 hours and 35 seconds. That theoretical floor is less than 2.5 minutes below it. A 2025 peer-reviewed study modeled what happens when elite runners use legal pacemaker formations in real races to strategically minimize aerodynamic drag. The conclusion was that an official sub-2 marathon is physically feasible, with the athletes currently alive, under conditions that do not violate the rules. The carbon plate shoes that every record holder wears today have been shown in independent research to improve running efficiency by 2 to 4%, which in marathon terms is between 1 and 4 minutes off of finishing time. That technology exists right now, in every major city marathon on Earth. The technology is ready. The bodies are ready. Jacob Kiplimo is lined up for the 2026 London Marathon on April 26th. That is weeks from now. One of the deepest fields ever assembled, on a course built for records, and the man who just broke the world half marathon record in Lisbon is at the starting line. He left school at 10 because there was no money. He ran to school in the mountains because there was no bus. He had his greatest performance erased by the shadow of a car. He went back 6 months later and broke the record anyway. The clock is not the enemy. The clock is the question. And we are closer to the answer than we have ever been. I am Sebastian. This is the injury breakdown. If you want to understand exactly what Kiplimo's body would need to do differently over 42 kilometers compared to 21, comment the word Kiplimo below, and I will make sure you do not miss that video. And if this one hit different for you, you already know what sharing it does for this channel.